the short version, if you will, of our family story. Okay? Because I think it's always fun. It's an important part of the business. We try to share our stories. We all have one. That's a good thing. But it's a lot of fun when you reach different milestones in the business and you get to go to a seminar or a convention and you hear some of the background of the people. You realize, you know what, they're just like me. They're just like us. They're just different. Some people have a little more professional story, sometimes a little more, what would I say? When I say professional, they have degrees like David did, or they've been to prestigious schools. Other people have been to they have prestigious degrees too, but in the school of hard knocks, because they worked really hard to move themselves in their life through really a lot of hard work to get where they are in life. And you find all kinds here. You find everybody, and that's an amazing part of the business. So, real quick, we're going to talk a little bit about teamwork. But just to share again about our family, our background. So my dad was a police pilot, for those of you who don't know who might be new in the business. He was in Miami. He was a policeman, flew helicopters down there, and he was shown the business opportunity by another guy who was another pilot who flew for customs. And this gentleman, his name was John, showed him the business over a cup of coffee at the airport and a coffee shop at the airport. And my dad had seen the plan 3 times, I think, before that point, and had said, listen, John, do you think I can make about $800 a month at this thing? Because he really he needed some extra money. He was already working part-time, doing some other stuff. And he said, yeah, I think you can, but, you'll have to do the work. And so he got going in the business. They went silver, I think, in about 4 months, because they were told by their upline, make a list, show everybody on the plan the list, and so my dad did. He's a pretty driven kind of person, for those of you who have heard him. And so he just went through the list, like literally went through the list. Like, here's the next person, pick up the phone, call him, listen, we need to sit down and talk, I got a business I want to show you. I mean, he was about that direct. And he showed it to him, and if they didn't get in, they were checked off the list, he went to the next one. And he just kept doing it. And, most of us are not quite that driven, but he was, and had a large network of people that he knew, a lot of people on his list, and just did it. So went silver quickly, went emerald in about 2 years, if I remember. I have to ask my wife because I don't remember the details of my own life, but so I think I was about 10 years old when they got started in the business. They've been in over 30 years now, and never looked back. He went emerald. They reached a point, and I won't go into all sorts of stories. I could tell some really fun stories. But they went emerald, and he eventually quit his job and went full-time in the business as an emerald, if I remember correctly, and then went diamond basically the year that I left home. So I turned 18, went in the Air Force, went to the Air Force Academy, and when that happened, that's when they were going diamond. And so I was there for 8 years or so while they made that journey during the work and working hard, my brother and I. And so I know all about being home with babysitters or being home alone, going to conventions, going to seminars, doing meetings at the house, doing nuts and bolts, training, meeting new people, you name it, times when Tim Foley would be at our house in his station wagon picking up products. A crazy part of the business when there was nothing going on down in South Florida. And the business was not what it is today. It was not the digital business of today. So I'll share all that because then my story kind of started, right? So I leave home, go to the Air Force Academy, was real excited. I wanted to be a pilot, wanted to fly fighters. Got a chance to get some rides in some fighters, and some F-15s in Holland and Schusterberg in the Netherlands during a summer program, and decided, you know what, that really wasn't the direction I wanted to go in life. And I just saw how they lived, how the average fighter pilot has to live, and they have to work so hard and be so dedicated in order to fly those jets the way they do, because things are happening so fast. And they didn't have, in my mind, a well-balanced life. Now remember, my formative years came from me growing up in the business, so I had a different framework than most people around me. A lot of people were very focused on what they want to do, and I knew I had options in life. So I ended up deciding I wanted to be an investigator while I was in the Air Force. Those of you who've seen that television show, NCIS. So that was my job, right? Wore a suit, even though I was in the Air Force, and carried a gun and a badge, and did counterintelligence work, and was kind of a detective type thing, if you will, for military matters. And I got to tell you guys, I loved my work that I did. Got out of school, but before I got out, I met Jennifer because she went to the Air Force Academy too. So we were both officers in the Air Force, and that's where we met. And got out in the real world and really loved it. Enjoyed the work like crazy because it was interesting work. When at the time it was mostly beepers and cell phones. When my beeper would go off in the middle of the night, because there was some drama. Either a dead body someplace or, I was like 23, 24 years old. So it was one of those things where it was exciting. It was interesting. You roll up, in the middle of the night, and crime scene tape everywhere, and the lights going, and, it's different. It's not, you in a very short period of time, you see stuff that most people don't ever see in their lifetime, or they see once in their whole life. But what I started to notice, and what I started to see as I progressed in that part of my life, was that it was not all it was cracked up to be. Beyond the excitement, I started to see that there's drama behind all that, right? I noticed that, a lot of my colleagues that had been doing this for some of them 20 years, they were starting to be chain smokers. It was either one cigarette being lit by another cigarette, followed by several cups of coffee and drinking at night, and they were on marriage number 2 or 3, some of them, because it was very stressful. And, I wasn't burnt out. It was still fun for me. But I saw that some of them were. And, that can happen in those type of high-stress jobs, those people that work in emergency rooms or, in law enforcement or are firemen or, military, some other stuff, but these high-stress jobs. And then I noticed, after I was stationed and we would have to move occasionally, we went to Washington, D.C., and I noticed that I was working in an operations center, and one of these very secure buildings with no windows, and it's running 24/7, so there's always something happening. And it was interesting because on one Saturday, I'll never forget this, there was an incident somewhere in the world. I was on shift, had a small group of people that was working for me, and the general, we had a 1-star general that I worked for, and he was in charge of the whole organization, and had to brief him on some issues that came up. And then after things calmed down, he came back to the operations center and sat down with me. The building's empty, this big building. There's nobody in it but us, because it's a weekend. And he started talking to me. And he said, Ken, and this guy's probably been in close to 30 years in the Air Force at the time, and very successful, the most successful person in my career field. And he said, Ken, you've got a lot you could be really successful with this team. You could go places here. He says, I recommend you and your wife buy a house here in the D.C. area because you'll probably be stationed here at least 2 or 3 more times in between other places you're going to have to go. And you'll have to, you'll probably go to Korea or Saudi Arabia or, the Middle East where you'll be stationed, in Europe, different places, and you'll have different positions. But you'll end up back here, and, that's what my wife and I did, and, it's been 20-something years. Our house is paid off, and Eventually you'll have staff jobs at the Pentagon. And there was this whole world, my head was spinning. And so here I am sitting with this man who, if you will, I could see that he was me in 20 or 30 years. This is what I was going to be. If I was the number one guy, there's only one of him. That would be the best shot that I could have. And so it was this sense, right, that I was climbing the ladder, but my ladder was against the wrong wall. That was the feeling. It was very overwhelming because he was getting more excited as he was mentoring this young captain. And I was thinking, I need to be thinking about something else because I'm not getting excited about this anymore. There's other stuff that I want to do in life. And so Jennifer and I got out and started working with my folks and started helping out in our family business. It was like I was there. Took 9 years I was gone and then back. And this is years ago. But it was really something else. Because what we did when we came back, because we had these other options for our family, and the Woods family everybody who builds an Amway business builds it a little differently. For the Woods family, we really build it as a family. We're a team. My brother and I and his wife, Jen and I, and my folks, we operate as a family unit. And so this business has supported our family for a long time. But something that I noticed that we had was this different team, right? A very different team that we came back to compared to what I was leaving. And Jen's going to talk about that in a little bit. But I just wanted to share that, everybody here is going to be developing their own team. And you already have a team. Here's a fun picture of Doc and Laney, David and Camille with my folks there in the kitchen. I think that was in when they had their house on the water. I was flipping through some old pictures in a photo album the other day and just randomly came across these. A picture of Jerry and Judy Harless, all people that were part of a team that was developed out of South Florida. This was a team that started down there. You guys have a team that you're developing here. And some of you had teams that you're developing other places around the country, even around the hemisphere. So you think about it, we have an opportunity, a business that is very different than conventional business. Very different than the military.
One thing I'm going to add about this photo is, when Ken's parents built their business in South Florida and they met these different people, I don't think that they really realized that these are going to be not just teammates but friends, almost family, for the next 20, 25 years. These pictures are probably from early 90s, maybe, but the relationships go back even further than that. And I know that when I became part of the Woods family, we were married in 95. When I first got around the business was when Ken and I first started dating. And we had been dating probably about 6 months, and I came down to Florida, met his family. And then the fall, I went to my first convention because that's where you went on Thanksgiving. And I wanted to see Ken. So we went to, I think it was the Swan or the Dolphin, I don't know, someplace in Orlando. And we went down there and started meeting people that I still see today. And that is really wonderful because, some people are going to come and go, but other people, you just can have these relationships with them and know that you can count on them and build memories and build businesses that profit you both, that can last generationally. His parents built a business. We're going into year number 34. How often does that happen in the United States? It's very rare that you have a structure that can last that long. And it's a privilege for us to be able to say that and know that we still have relationships with the people that are on this screen. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I want to share, a couple things real quick. Just some things that I want you to think about as you're building your team. Okay? Because this isn't just about the past, and it's not just about the future. It's about now. It's about the fact that all of us are part of this team here. So I have this slide because if you're new or you've been around for a while, we have this term called cross-lining, right? And so there's not a good picture or image of cross-lining. So I have this image here of a couple people up to a line. And when you're a teammate, you have responsibilities. You have things that you're supposed to do to help make sure that the team does well. And one of the things that I share for all of us is that we want to be encouragers. We want to encourage people that are cross-line to us. We want to encourage our downline, our upline. One thing we don't want to do is we don't want to create a situation where I would give advice to you. Let's say that we're cross-line. Let's say that Jennifer's our upline, and you're in the leg out of Philadelphia, right? And I'm in a leg out of Allentown, and you're not in my upline, and I'm not in your upline. And we know each other. We bump into each other. We see each other at all the seminars. We see each other at open meetings occasionally, conventions, other stuff. We become friends. Our families become friends because we see each other so much. But there's a point, because we are talking about a business, that we don't want to cross. And we call that cross-lining. And typically what happens there is that's when you start giving advice to somebody when they're not in your business. I'm not talking about generic advice like follow the 8-step pattern or do good or use products or here's a product I like. I'm talking about very specific advice or things that if you gave them some advice and it turned out to be bad advice, that you could hurt her business, right? Because if she's the upline, that just wouldn't be fair because they're not in your business. They're not part of your group. And, there's no hard and fast rule about, well, what's cross-lining? What's good advice? What's bad advice? Just know that you should be sensitive enough as a good teammate, just like they should be sensitive to you, that when you bring people, new people to the team, that what you say and do can impact them and impact others around you. So you don't want to give somebody cross-line from you advice without making sure that you coordinate with somebody else. It's just respect, right? Because you want to make sure that if they might not know things that you know. And you want to show them some respect by saying, you know what, before I give you some advice, I'm going to go talk to your upline and make sure, hey, I'm talking about this, I've got this going on, hey, I've got this great idea. And they might say, you know what, share it with me and I'll talk to my idea about it. Or, maybe you don't even want to share it with them. So think about that. Here's something else. You don't want to, when you have a team, you try not to, unless you just don't like the people at all. You try not to share any negative downline or cross-line. No negative. Share positive, edifying things. Talk to them that they're part of a good team. Tell them that they can do it. Tell them that you believe in them and you love them and you trust them and they can move forward. Try not to share negative cross-line or downline because, again, it's not your team. Or if it is your team, you don't need to fill their head with confusion, right? You don't want to hurt their business by telling them all of your problems. Now, I don't mean be fake. If there are issues, you need to deal with them. That's important. But you don't want to create a situation where you start dumping a lot of garbage on somebody when they're over there living their life, excited about the business, having good things going on, or working through their own issues, that now you're going to slow them down. It's not fair, right? And you don't want to do it to your downline. You especially don't want to do it to your cross-line. I want to tell you guys something else. We have, and I'm going to pull out the whiteboard here again for a real quick second. We have a very interesting team. And what I mean by that is, I like to think of this as the e-commerce business, right? Where you've got the individual or the internet or this interconnected world with us in it bumping into commerce, where we empower people to have and be part of a team where they can do business unlike any other business in the world. And our family is living proof of that, right? Over 3 decades of doing this. What we have, though, is what I like to think of, and you see it up there on the board, these concentric circles. And they all touch, right? They call it a Venn diagram. But all these circles, like Amway, the line of sponsorship, Efinity, partner stores, Neutralite, Artistry, Legacy of Clean, we have products, we have infrastructure, we have business, and it all interconnects. They all touch. You know, they're all separate, if you will, but they all touch, and where they touch is with us, with you. We are at the center of it. We have an amazing team that we are a part of, a team that's enviable, if you will. Not just training and education and support, not just a good line of sponsorship that's very healthy and solvent and has been around for a long time and has a lot of experience. But that's not just for Ken and Jennifer. That's our team. You know, you guys are at the center of all this. You have a lot of support. We don't think about that. You know, that's something that most of us don't have in our plan A world life, in our jobs. We don't have that kind of support. They're designed to be there to help us make a big impact in life. So, I know Jennifer was going to talk a little bit about some things.
All right. Really what we wanted to focus on with our story today is the idea that this business is a business in which we work together, that we have teams of people that are built. Right? We can't do it by ourselves. It's not designed to be a business that you just run by yourself and you never have to interact with anybody. That is not the structure of the business. But there's a lot of different ways that you can build teams. And I know that for me, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a military culture with my dad being in the Air Force. And then right out of high school, what I wanted to do was go and I also wanted to be a pilot in the Air Force. I went to the Air Force Academy because that was the best way to get that track. Upon arrival at the Air Force Academy, they told me, oh, you have something wrong with your eyes that we didn't know about, so you cannot be a pilot, which was kind of a bummer for me because that was why I went. But I decided I still wanted to go ahead and pursue a career as a military officer, and I managed to make it through those 4 years. But the military way of forming a team is much different than the way that we do, right? I mean, the military way is to have a very strong structure, and it's based on rules and regulations, and you relate to people. You get put in a team, and you relate to people more on their position and your chain of command than you do on any sort of relationships. I mean, relationships are good. You definitely want to build relationships with your team, but if your superior officer tells you to do something and he is the person that you like the least in the whole wide world, you're still going to have to do it, right? You don't have a choice to leave the team. You don't have a choice to do something different. When we went to the academy, the first year is a challenging time for any freshman cadet. It's definitely a different culture being there, and we had to do lots of very silly things. We had to only wear our uniforms all the time. You had different uniforms you could wear, but you could never wear civilian clothes. You could only walk down certain stairwells. You couldn't talk outside of your rooms. You know, couldn't just have a conversation walking down the hall. When we went for meals, you had to eat your food, and you could only chew 7 times. So you had to sit there and you had to count. And there would be people at your table that would count how many chews you were taking, and then if you took too many, they would call you out on it. It was a big pain. I struggled with it a lot, especially the first semester, because for one thing, I lost my dream. And I didn't respond very well to the idea of just doing something because somebody said I should do it. That was hard for me. I know why they did it. They wanted us to be followers because they wanted us to understand what it meant to just take an order, to be part of a team, and you're just taking an order and you're making it happen. And so they wanted us to learn how to be followers before they could teach us to be leaders, which is what the rest of the time there was about. But I was stubborn, and I had a hard time, and some people didn't struggle as much as I did. I really did. I just bucked against the system, and I didn't enjoy it. So when we came out of the military, and we started seeing, especially for me, because I didn't grow up in this business, we started seeing how different teams could work. That was so refreshing because these teams in the Amway business, you're building teams which really are teams based on relationships. And if you have a business that's really growing, you're making communities, right? Just like I referred to when they had the pictures of the Weisers and Lombardis and the Harlesses. These were people that I knew as friends. I mean, I've only known you as friends, not as, well, we just met them and they're in our business. So many times we can think of this business as a network marketing business. That's what it's called. We're in the industry of network marketing. But there's a big difference between network and the idea of building a community. A network would be something like being a member of Costco, right? Or BJ's. For us, it's BJ's. We don't have a Costco nearby. You pay a little fee, you get your card, you get the privilege of shopping in the store, which I like Costco a lot. I mean, I think it's kind of cool to go into Costco and to be able to buy massive amounts of applesauce and things like that. They have some good food too. My parents are members of Costco, and they do have good food. But there's no responsibility. There's nothing that I have to do to be a member of this network, right? Nobody expects in Costco. Nobody expects me to do anything other than maybe pay my membership fee every year, and that's fine for that type of thing. But there's other teams. There's other groups that you can belong to, which are much more community-based. And some of you may know that we have two boys, like Ken said earlier. Tyler and Ryan are their names, and we have homeschooled them their whole lives. I think Tyler went to preschool 1 year, but we've homeschooled them. And that's been a great lifestyle for us because it's given us flexibility in traveling and doing different things, especially with the business. It's been really a nice pairing for us. We joined a group in our county, a homeschool support group, and I paid my little membership fee. But when I became part of that group, we were a community, right? I still had to pay my fee, but we were a community. We did things for each other. We would set up classes to help the kids. We would do field trips. We would find out if somebody had a new baby and give them meals. I mean, you were building relationships. It wasn't just about being a number and getting a benefit. And that's really much more of what we're about in this business. It's the idea of creating communities. One of my favorite, make sure I'm on track. I know we're trying to actually get you out on time, and so we're compressing things. But so how do we build? How do we build effective teams that are more similar to communities than networks? I mean, that really is our goal. Because you can approach it like a network, but I don't know that that's, when I've observed and what I've experienced is that that's not where you see businesses that are really growing. They're not just they're not impersonal networks. They are personal communities. One of the ways that you can be better about building a community is really understanding the importance of connecting with people. So, how do we better connect with people? Because I think that this is really a key. I used to think that it was really a gift. Some people had the ability to connect with others just based off of their personality. And there are certain personality types that do a better job. You know, they just are more extroverted. They can get out there and they can connect with people. They make people just like them. But what I have seen and what I know to be true myself is that this is a skill. You can learn how to better connect with people, and when you are able to do that, then you are better able to build communities and better able to build teams. And so as I've looked around and learned more about this skill over the last 20 years, one of the ways that I've really seen people becoming, or ways to learn this, is by modeling after many of the leaders, all of the leaders in this business are very good at connecting with people. So you can look at Steve and Annette. They do an excellent job. You can look at Dave and Camille Weiser. You can look at Fred and Vicky Vasta. You know, Clarence. All of these people are just do such a good job of connecting with other people. That's one way that you can do it. But you also can really learn, you can build up your skills by reading books. I mean, there are so many different places, so many different authors that just give you nice tips. And these are all things, these are the reasons why we promote books so often. Because you can change the way that you think, and you can change the way that you interact with people by applying the things that are taught in these books. One of the, obviously, Dale Carnegie, John Maxwell is excellent at this. I just read a book by John Maxwell and Jim Dornan. Does anybody remember Jim Dornan? You know who Jim Dornan is? For those of you who don't know Jim Dornan, he actually passed away last year, unfortunately. But he was a crown in our business and was just an amazing man. He had a business that spanned the globe, right? Not in our personal business, but in the Amway business. And his influence is still, and his business is still all around the world. You know, his family is continuing it, obviously. But he wrote a book, he co-authored a book with John Maxwell. And there were several points in there I wanted to share with you because I just thought that these were good tips, specific tips that can help people connect with others. First, realizing that connecting is reaching out. It's all about reaching out to others. And so you need to do that. You need to make people feel valued. And there's things that you can do. You be a good listener. You ask questions. You know, the whole idea of FORM, the acronym FORM, family, occupation, recreation, and then what's M, message, I think. You know, or even if you go into a situation, have some questions that you already have rehearsed. Just have 2 or 3 questions that you say, I'm going to go up to somebody that I don't know very well and I'm going to ask them these 2 or 3 questions. Because then you're not in a situation where you're standing there and you're trying to think. You know, you're under pressure and you're trying to come up with something to ask them and you're like, oh, this is awkward. If you go into the situation knowing what you're going to ask them, it's much easier to do that. Talk more about the other person than you talk about yourself. It was interesting last night. We talked to a man in line waiting for our car. He was wearing a shirt that said, West Point, class of 2018. So I said to him, do you have a child? Wasn't going to assume. Do you have a child who is at West Point, who just went to West Point? And sure enough, he has a son who just was finishing up his basic training, and they were going out there for family weekend, and he talked to us for like 10 minutes straight. We knew his whole story. But he was excited to tell us about that. You know, and that was a connection that we were able to make just by the fact that, you know, I asked a question based off of his T-shirt. Bring something of value to the interaction. You can bring a quote, or you can bring, if it's somebody that maybe you're trying to get to know, you can bring them a book that you like. You know, something that, or a product even. Say, you know what, I know that maybe you've had a little bit of knee pain. Here's some glucosamine that for my business that I think would help you. And that shows that you care enough about them that you know, actually notice them and could remember maybe a detail of their life, and that helps them. At the close of the conversation, you can ask if there's anything you can do for them. Because people remember acts of service. And it doesn't have to be huge, but it can just be, you know, just a little thing. And if you follow through on your offer, they're going to remember that for a long time, because it doesn't happen that often in our culture, unfortunately. Another thing is to initiate contact with the other person. Don't expect that person to contact you. Right? A lot of us, and I know that I fall victim to this, is like, he hasn't called me, or she hasn't called me in like a long time. I haven't heard from her in weeks. And Ken says to me, why don't you text her? She should be texting me. You know, I mean, come on. That's not a good attitude to have. If you want to have a positive contact with somebody, then take the initiative. And even if it feels maybe a little awkward because you got to work out something, that's fine. You can always take the initiative to reach out. Seek to find common ground, because that's the place where you can grow. And it seems like everybody has at least some area where they've got common ground. Most people, I mean, we're all human. We go through similar situations. So if you say, I don't have anything in common with this person, maybe you need to try a little bit harder, but you can find a place where you have common ground. And then finally, believe that you can make a difference in their lives. I think that especially in this business, that's very important. You know, we've got something that can make a difference in the lives of the people that you're talking to. You find a need and you can help solve that problem or that need that they have. And believe that by working with them, that you are going to make their life better, right? We're thinking about the other person, not just the way that it's going to help you, but the way that you can be of benefit to the people that you're talking to. So all of these ways, I think there's so many more. Such a small summary of the things that I've seen and that I've read and that I've seen in my own life. But if you just take a few of these, if you just say, okay, this week I'm going to do one of these things, I promise you that you're going to see that it works and that you're better able to connect with people. And that's the way that we're going to start building communities. And that's the way that you're going to really see your business grow, because people are going to want to be around you. They're going to want to be in community with you because it's a nice place to be, right? I just want to show this picture. He's not here, and I'm sad because I always love seeing Doc. Making myself emotional. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's a strength or a weakness, but I can go here very quickly. Being generous with other people is also a really good way of connecting. And one of my favorite moments with Doc happened this last summer. He is an incredibly generous man. He has been generous the entire time that I've known him, and I've known him since I've known the Woods. I mean, I forget when they got into the business. It was in the mid-late 80s. So I've known him as long as I've known Steve and Annette, really. And he has been inviting Ken and I and our boys to go up to his cabin, or his house, I should say, in Maine for years. And finally last summer we said, you know what, we're going to take you up on the offer. We're just going to make it happen. And we went up there, and he treated us like family. He really, really did. He gave us the cottage to stay in. We had this private space. The whole family came together. All of his family made us welcome. And we had a fabulous time. We'd never been to Maine before. We went kayaking. We went exploring. We had a lobster dinner that was fresh that morning from the lobster pots, because he's got a friend who's a lobsterman and just dropped it off. And, how exciting was that for my kids who, we've had Florida lobster, but they don't have claws. So it's more exciting to have the ones that have the big claws, And then I captured this moment with Doc and Ken, sharing a cup of coffee and just having a conversation. And it was such a treasured moment. It was wonderful. And I would love for everybody here to be able to say, you know what, I have built relationships with people over a period of time where I know that I can treat them and trust them as though they were my family. And we've been blessed to have those relationships. So I'm going to bring Ken back up, but I think we'll finish quickly, but just a couple more things.
So to build a good community does not mean that you have to invite everybody in your group to your house for lobster dinner, okay? So that doesn't have to happen. But, something Jennifer said I think was great. What are we talking about here? We're talking about learning to make connections with people. That's the special thing. Because if you can make a connection with somebody, then you can have a real conversation with them. I loved what you just said, and I think it's very true. One thing that people who do life together do is they help each other, right? So if you have a friend, well, now you have a business, right? So if you have this business that's yours, and it gives you an opportunity to help others. And what's cool is you profit from it when the volume moves through your business. What a novel concept. But it's almost a throwback to the old days of having the local family store, right? And here's what I mean by that. Where In the old days, in the old Wild West, somebody would show up to your store and, the storekeeper knew everybody. And so they were able to help them with something. They needed a certain product. They'd order something for them. They would talk to them about their family, all that type of stuff. Well, we have like the 2014 digital version of it. We do it with texting, webinars, cell phones, things like that. But one thing we can do as we build community with people is you can say to them, hey, listen, I noticed that, something happened. Let's say something happened with their spouse who maybe had an injury from exercising. Well, great. You know what you can do? You can bring them some glucosamine. You can bring them some CalMag-D. You can bring them something that it's a little gesture, a friendly gesture to them of one of your products to make a little bit of a connection. So here you have the opportunity to make a customer of somebody, and I'm not saying to do this to use people, okay? I'm saying to do this because you're genuinely interested in their life. And then they look at you totally differently because nobody does that today. People don't do this sort of thing. They don't help each other, right? So if you are willing to reach out and help build community with others, whether it's with our business opportunity or with our products, you can make great connections with people by just extending yourself a little bit. Can I see the thing with the remote for a second? Something else I want to share as we close. Jennifer and I recently took a trip about 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, right before the last convention. We had the opportunity to go to Israel this year. And I don't know if it's on anybody's bucket list. It was a little bit on ours, and like I said, our faith's very important to us, and it was something we wanted to do. And so I'm going to share a couple quick pictures. But what I wanted to tell you is this: you, and I don't like the word attract, but you get what you focus on. If you focus on negative, you will find more negative. If you focus on positive, you will find more positive.
There's a quote I just heard that says, whatever you feast your eyes on increases in influence, right? So if you are only looking at the negative, you're going to experience a lot more negative in your life. It's just going to become more powerful to you if that's where you always put your attention. But if you choose to look and put your attention on positive things, if you choose to put your attention on the things that you're going after and the dreams that you have, then those things will become much more powerful in your life. That there's a truth to that. Because
that's what you're focusing on. And we try to teach that in this business because it's so easy to forget it when you're by yourself. It's easy to remember when we're in a room full of people like this. But when you're out on your own, sometimes we forget it. So we don't want you to forget it. We want you to be thinking about that. Think about a way to feast your eyes on what you want so that you can have that become more of an influence in your life and focus on that. And I share that, this point because there are rewards for that, right? In our business, when you become more of a master of that capability and that skill of helping other people and building communities as opposed to just networks and helping fill the needs of other people, a magic takes place. And with our business, because of the compensation plan and how it works, you can make some money. And not just money, time. What Camille talked about earlier, being able to go on some of their trips when their kids were younger with their motorhome, that was special not just because they could do it financially, but because they could do it. So many times we don't have a profession or a job where we can do something like that. Well, that's been one of the benefits of this business. So Jen and I got a chance to go with a bunch of kids from our youth group at church to Israel, about 13, 17 students, something like that. And several other churches, some other people. There was a gentleman that arranges these types of trips, and we flew through Canada to Tel Aviv, and we spent 9 days in Israel. And, it was not an inexpensive trip. But what was cool about it was we through this business, we've had the opportunity, not just financially, but time-wise, to be able to go do something like this with our boys.
This trip really was something that was designed to be for the students. I mean, a lot of older adults went as well, but our church wanted to do something which would actually provide a little bit of scholarship of sorts. They made it less expensive for the students to be able to go. It was I'm not thinking of the word supplemented by a lot of people who sponsored them. And so we had, most of the kids that went were unaccompanied. They were between 14 and 21 years old, and they were the ones who went. None of their other family members went at all. I think we had one other family from our church whose the father went. But Ken and I, when we heard about it, we were like, oh, we'd really like to do that. That sounds great. It'd be fun for the kids to go with their friends. And Ken said to me, he's like, I'd like you and Tyler to go. And I said, you know what? I don't want to go without you, because I enjoy experiencing things with my husband. I didn't want to be on my own and then come back and tell him the story and say, we'll have to do this together someday. And so we talked about it. It's like, why not now? Why shouldn't we do this now? Do we have anything planned in June? And, looked at the calendar. No, there's nothing planned in June. And so we were able to go with our whole family and experience something that we've wanted to do for a long time. And we were basically the only family who was able to do that, and that was such a blessing.
Yeah, so we, share a couple fun photos. Like Camille said, this isn't about us as much as sharing that this is an opportunity that came to a family that started out as a police pilot, shown by another guy that had the confidence in himself to say, you know what, I got a friend who might do this. And he showed it to somebody. And then after some hard work and some years, had an opportunity to do something amazing for our family. So here's just a quick picture. So 3 of us, one of our friends took this photo, swimming in the Sea of Galilee. Ryan with a...
camel selfie.
Yeah, he did a camel selfie. Right? Actually, it wasn't a selfie. I think somebody took it for him. Pretty funny when you've got a Coke can with Arabic writing on it. It's not something you see in Florida very often with a camel. Our 2 Bedouin boys there, actually Tyler and one of his friends, and the back is behind them is the Valley of the Shadow of Death out of the Scriptures. I didn't know that was a real place. I always thought that was a metaphor. Out of Psalm 23. It's not. It's actually a real place. We went there. I couldn't believe it. So, not very hospitable place. You don't want to stay there. It's like, high, crazy desert between Jericho and Jerusalem. There's Ryan floating in the Dead Sea, where the salt content's like 30-something%. And you see, this is like waist-deep water. We swam way out there. Kind of floated. This gentleman's out there. He's about 6 feet tall. He's literally floating. You float so high you can read a newspaper while and not get it wet while you're out there. And there on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, Al-Aqsa Mosque behind us. And I share this that you can shut it down. It was an amazing trip. It was a once-in-a-lifetime trip.
Although I want to go back.
Yeah, well, we do want to go back. But, what's the trip you want to go on? What do you want to accomplish with your family? What do you want to do on your own? What do you want to see in life? Hopefully that, an afternoon like this will help you think about the fact that, look, those 2 aren't all that in a bag of donuts. You know what I mean? If they can do it, if their family can do this, why not me? Why not me? There's so many people in this room that started out, well, like everybody else did in here, with no points and no group. And with time and work and effort, started to build a business. And there's so many stories. And I want to hear you guys' story. It was too bad we didn't have longer today to hear a couple stories from some of the other leaders in the room. But, work on becoming a professional at the business. Work at learning how to make connections. There's a lot more I would love to say, but I'll just have to come back another time and do it then. We are part of a great team. We have a great business opportunity. Now is a good time to be building it. September 1st is coming, and we have a new fiscal year. And, we want to help.
Put those dreams on your wall. Write down your action plan. And we can start. We can move forward. We can get this momentum in this group right here so that we have to get a bigger place. And that would be awesome, right? So we can make it happen, and we have confidence in everybody here and believe in everybody here and are excited truly for what this may hold for all of us.
Absolutely. So we love you guys. We'll be praying for you. Thanks for having us.